Welcome back to another edition of Check Call. Don't forget to subscribe to Check Call, the newsletter on FreightWaves.com if you haven't already. Today we welcome back North Winship, president of Shiplify. Welcome back to the show, North.
Thanks for having me, Mary. Glad to be here.
I am today we're dabbling back into the world of LTL, which honestly I feel like doesn't really get enough attention. It doesn't get enough love because everybody, anytime you're like LTL is cool, they just go, no, it's not. Unless they're in LTL, then they know that it's cool. But I just feel like everybody hates unnecessarily on the LTL world. And I get it. It's confusing. There's 100 weights. It's weird. But it's fun, it's a little whimsical once you're into it. But yeah, so that's what we're diving into today. We already know your background from the last time you were on the show. And if anyone's not sure about that, they can go back and watch our previous episode together. But what I want to get in today is the thing that is the bane of everyone in LTL's existence, accessorials. It's something that the full truckload people don't quite get the full blessings that is. Don't get me wrong, full truckload, they have accessorials, but they don't have the obnoxious, ridiculous accessorials that LTL does. They don't have a whole chart that will take up 2 to 3 pages of a pricing agreement. So, North, why are accessorials one of the things that shippers should care about and logistics service providers should try to help mitigate their shippers when it comes to putting out a new pricing contract?
I would say first and foremost, because they can impact the margins on any of your shipments. If you're not in tune with potential accessorials or anything like that, and you just kind of wave them off and say, "Oh, we'll deal with that later," they can really jump up and bite you and get rid of your margins really pretty quickly. For instance, if you are shipping a grill to someone's house, right? That grill might need a lift gate and it's going to go to a residence and you're going to need to schedule an appointment, all of which have an accessorial fee associated with them. And if you're the shipper, and let's say you're Weber and you make $100 margin on that and you don't account for your accessorials, well, you might lose all of that margin just on those 3 accessorials right off the bat.
And some people might think, well, if I'm going to residential delivery, I know it's going to be a lift gate. Like, surely they won't charge me both of those. And that's where, yes, 1,000%. If it can be charged, the LTL carrier will charge it.
And frankly, they should. They have increased costs with that. They have increased liability. The tricky thing is knowing where and when to apply those fees and how to communicate it to their end customer, especially if you're a shipper and you don't know where your freight is going. Historically, there really hasn't been a great way to identify that information and do it accurately to where you can rely on it.
We've had some of the companies I've worked at before, anytime we've seen like a residential delivery on certain customers, like obviously, like we had one that was like kid yard furniture stuff, like kids' toys that you play with outside. Obviously, most of that's going to be residential delivery. But we had some other ones that we kept seeing residential delivery, and we're like, this is weird for what appeared to be a B2B customer. Like, that's kind of weird. And so we literally had to have someone go and look up the delivery addresses of everything that claimed to have a residential delivery and do like the Google map view to see if it was a residential delivery. And it wasn't, which that ended up being obviously savings for our customer, but that's also wildly inefficient to have to do that across like all of your customers. You can't just have someone sitting there typing addresses into Google Maps every day, doing the satellite view to see if it's a business or not.
Yep. You cannot, and frankly, you should not. I think everybody kind of agrees there with all the advancements in AI and technology and whatever else. Um, you should at least be able to determine from an address, hey, is this a residence? Is this a school? Is this a daycare? Right. Um, and the good news is, and for a for a nice plug here from Shiplify, we can help you do that. We can do that at the time of quote, give you visibility into that at the time of quote. So if you're passing freight charges along to your end customer, you can account for those accessorials that will inevitably hit. And whether it's us, whether you are looking things up on Google Maps, whether you're using some other tool, my preference would obviously be utilizing Shiplify to do this. But whatever your process may be, you should be vetting and validating pickup and delivery addresses and the characteristics of those addresses um, prior to tendering any freight with any carrier. And the more data you can provide to them, the more accurate data you can provide to them, the less surprises you're going to have on the back end, the less incurred costs and frustrations you're going to have on the back end as well, whether it's between you and your 3PL or broker, you and your carrier, you and your customer. The more information you can grab upfront at the time of quote, the better your life or your team's life is going to be down the line, and the better your relationships are going to be with the other folks and the other parties kind of privy to that shipment.
So, one of the things that honestly for me was the biggest like surprise, like I would, because I used to do auditing as well. So I would get these invoices and I would see, oh, it's something didn't match, whatever. And so I would look into why. The biggest thing that I caught so many times was that reweigh. That's kind of it's like if they're gonna put an accessorial on it, 9 times out of 10, reweigh is or reclassification is gonna pop up there. Why is that why is that something that is so common on LTL invoices? Is there a way around it, or are you just kind of stuck at the mercy of the carrier whenever they decide it warrants a reweigh?
So I think most carriers now are running a good chunk of their shipments through dimensionalizers, reweighing everything, making sure the classifications are right. Um, because so many of their shippers do it, they palletize the freight differently. They have different SKUs. They have all sorts of differences in how the freight gets packaged, and all of those things can impact class, weight, those sorts of things. Um, and so if you're a shipper and you're sitting there and you're dealing or a broker and you're sitting there and 20%, 30%, I've heard of up to 62% of invoices are getting hung up because of either reweigh and reclassification or kind of on the back end, unforeseen liftgate, limited access, residential. Those accessorials, if you don't have a good understanding of what impacts those sorts of things, then you're never going to have a good understanding of, okay, what are your true costs associated with moving the freight, and you can't really optimize on that and make sure you're charging your customers properly for it. Um, we actually we're working with a 3PL that's looking at putting in to shamelessly plug another company, putting in Cubiscan scanners in their customers' warehouses and facilities, and they're footing the bill for that so that they can deal with the reweighs and reclasses up front. Their shippers can get that information, and then they're putting in Shiplify kind of an integration with us at the time of quote. So you get all of this visibility and you get on the same page with your carriers up front and eliminate all of the headaches with freight audit and disputes and all of that fun stuff that some people think may give LTL a bad name.
A lot of people think that that gives LTL a bad name, but that is something that I think is a really interesting perspective, because you have typically whenever you're thinking about improvement and innovation in LTL and you're trying to figure out how to mitigate costs, the solution isn't necessarily to invest in your customer and put all these resources in there. But on the back end, it makes it so much more efficient because then as the auditor, that's less invoices I'm having to handle. That's less things I'm having to do and less exceptions I'm going to have to manage, meaning that those exceptions that I do have to manage, they're truly getting the time, they're truly getting my complete energy to investigate fully. Because I know that a lot of times I was guilty of this. If I tried to investigate it, or if the shipper thought that that shouldn't have been reweighed, or if it was classified appropriately, I was just kind of at the mercy of the carrier, and I was like, "Well, unfortunately, that's what they've decided, and unless you can prove otherwise when it left your dock, like, we're kinda stuck here." And I think that that is a really interesting solution that you guys have taken or you guys have partnered with to make sure that, those customers are protected throughout the whole thing. Not that necessarily LTL carriers are trying to get one up on people, but, it's just kind of another point of it's just another data point that says, "Okay, well, this is how we saw it when it left, and then you're seeing it over here as something else." Clearly, there's a disconnect, and if we can figure that out at the beginning, then that saves us from potentially months, years of headaches down the road.
Yeah, and exactly, and obviously that's a pretty unique case of 3PL putting in dimensionalizers into warehouses at their some of their customers' facilities. But um, yeah, I mean, ultimately, it can help solve the problem. It gets the customer on the same page as the carrier. They're looking at the same things in the same way, and so that's an option. But even if your 3PL isn't doing that on your behalf, it is still worth looking into that, digging into the historical data, seeing, okay, why am I getting hit with these reways, reclassifications, going to your broker or going to your carrier and saying, what can I do better? How can I improve my packaging processes or this and that and the other, to really kind of solve that side of the equation. And then on the back end, knowing more about your pickup and delivery locations, which is really, again, to shamelessly plug Shiplify, that's kind of where we come in. um, we've kind of we've kind of slotted in, with a lot of the carriers, helping them do a better job of understanding um, what is going to a residence. Maybe it's a business being run out of a home, but it's still a residence, and the carrier still thinks it's worthwhile enough to apply a fee. Well, we can help you with that. We can help you with that on the front end. We can help you with that in the audit perspective, or and kind of on the back end on the audit side of things. Um, and yeah, I mean, I think again, the fact that we've gotten some adoption, a good amount of adoption from a lot of the LTL carrier base. They are now kind of starting to point to some of these things as saying, "Oh, well, Shiplify identified this as a grocery warehouse or a military base or a school or whatever else." And they're, somebody calls up and said, "Well, I didn't know this was a school, or I didn't request limited access, at the time of quote. I don't want to pay this fee." But then if you do go out and look at it and you pull it up on Google Maps or wherever, it is a school or it is on a military base, and the carrier is charging that accurately, hopefully. Um, and where we kind of come in is saying, "Hey, we can help you do this on the front end. We can move this further upstream, eliminate a lot of headaches, pain on the back end." And then, as much as I'd like to think we're perfect, and I'm seeing myself on the screen here, and I'm like, that's pretty damn close to being perfect. Um, but we know we're not perfect. We know, there's bad data out there. We want to get that corrected, find it, get that corrected as quickly as we can, as painlessly as we can. And what we've started to see is, shippers, 3PLs that have started to adopt our service. If they notice any bad information, they can let us know. If it is truly bad, we'll get it corrected. Um, and then they can go to the carriers during their audit process and say, "Hey, this location has a forklift. It doesn't require a lift gate. Please remove this from the bill." And we validated it with Shiplify. Um, and typically, 9 times out of 10, the carrier will remove that fee. So it winds up being a pretty helpful solution.
I think that, that's first of all, I love that because as someone who was in the trenches fighting every day, sending screenshots of Google Maps, short of and, like, I think at one point in time, I asked a customer to please go out and take a picture of their building and the road that led to it because I was like, "I'm done fighting this, like, we are done." Um, so, but that's also, how much that also is how much do you wanna dig your heels in and how petty do you wanna be about, like and it's always like a $50 charge that I'm fighting over, but it's the principle of the matter. Um, because some of those accessorials really add up, like, you can get 3 to 4 I've even seen, like, 5 accessorials on one LTL shipment before, and, like, you can try to mitigate those as much as you can, but like, my gosh, it's like $25 here, $50 there. And then I've even seen some remote access deliveries, like per charge was like $80 a pop, if not like up, I'm pretty sure now they're up to 100 because that was like 5 years ago. Um, but yeah, it's those accessorials, like that whole like the document that you can find on any LTL carriers websites, they love to put extra zeros behind stuff.
So they can add up to where it can, and depending on the freight, it can outweigh the base freight charges, depending on where it's going, how well packaged it is, all of that sort of thing. Um, on from my perspective, the carriers with these accessorials, they're doing their job, because the way all the quoting works within the industry is zip zip, shipment characteristics, weight, class, pieces, DIMS, whatever you need. Okay, give me a quote. I don't want to. If I'm a shipper, I don't want to provide you any more information than that. I just want to get a quote. Well, if you're not willing to do that, and you don't want to give them, well, where's this going? Well, you're not going to know about potential remote access charges. You probably will, because it's a zip code. But a limited residential lift gate, is a lumper service going to be required? Am I going to need an appointment at this location? Is this a preferred carrier going into a grocery distribution facility or a big box retail distribution facility? Those sorts of things. If you don't provide that information to the carrier up front, then you're going to get hit with these surprise fees on the back end. And all the carrier really is doing there is protecting their margin. And ultimately, you should be doing the same thing, and passing on the charges where they need to go.
That is something that has always completely blown my mind, is how much either a shipper tries to hide from a carrier or how much a 3PL tries to hide on behalf of their shipper for a carrier. And I'm like, to the point where like if I'm sending out an RFP for a customer and our sales team won't go get a picture, won't go ask the customer for a picture of freight, I'm like, then they're going to get the worst rates possible, because I was like, the carrier's going to assume it's floor loaded garbage. When in reality, if it's beautifully double stackable pallets wrapped in just sheer perfection, those rates are going to be a lot better than if they just have no idea. And it's just little things like that. And then also, the other thing that drives me insane is a lot of your B2C shippers. They'll just add, like, I understand during the holidays, they add fulfillment centers. It's a thing. I understand. However, when they add it and don't tell you, and then are surprised when their freight bills are so high, you're like, hey, fun fact, it's not in our pricing agreement. So if you need to do that, like the carrier's not contractually obligated to honor that pricing, because it's not at one of the like pre-listed facilities that you just up and decided to start running out of one day and not tell anybody.
Yeah, yeah, spot on. You can just preach on that one. I got nothing else to add.
Give me my soapbox. Thank you
Yeah,
very
there
much.
you go.
But it's just the little things like that that like, I guess that one's not really that little, but it's those things that like people just forget, is that, anytime you're making changes or you're doing things or you're coming out with a new product that might require more handling, like you do need to get everyone involved early on. You can't just say, put it on the truck, we'll figure it out, because I mean, you can, it will get figured out, but you're gonna pay for it.
Yeah. And I mean, the one thing I'll say there is, if you're a shipper and you're not investing in technology, whether it's in new systems or new technology in your warehouse, or you're not truly doing a deep dive into your freight spend, or evaluating your 3PL or your broker, and also evaluating your carrier, you are going to fall farther and farther behind. And if you're just pointing at the carrier and saying, hey, carrier's the bad guy. Well, what the carriers have been doing behind the scenes is they're investing in all of this technology. They're investing in dimensionalizers. They're investing in new and improved routing and scheduling systems. They're investing in companies and tools like Shiplify that can help them solve problems. And they're taking, while you might think, oh, they're just a trucking company. Well, they're taking, and some of them more so than others, but they are taking the steps to grow up with technology and that sort of thing. And if you're not doing that on the shipper side of things, you will fall behind, or you'll feel the pain of it down the line.
And that's where you can't really just throw your hands up and say like, well, it's not that problem. Because now that you mentioned shippers do have that technology, they are investing in this. If you say, well, like, I don't feel like it should have been reweighed, or I thought it was fine the first time, when a shipper comes back with like to the exact measurement of your dimensions, of your weight, of everything like that, you don't have a leg to stand on. You just like, they say, okay, this is what we show. What do you have? And if you're just like, I don't know, it's always that weight, they're going to say, okay, well, money, please, because we
Yeah,
don't agree with that.
exactly. It's a inaction is a costly decision in that scenario.
Yeah. And also, I mean, come on, it's 2025. Let's do some like medium level investment. I'm not saying we need to sink $1 billion into the greatest and freshest tech, but like, I don't know, maybe a little bit.
Yeah, just a bit,
Just a
a
little
little
bit.
bit.
Let's just get the supply chains off Excel. Anytime I can
Yeah.
shoehorn that in there, I'm going to get your supply chain off Excel. All right. Notice we have a couple minutes left today. So I'm gonna hit you with 2 quick questions. Number 1, what do you recommend anyone who's like struggling, overwhelmed with accessorials? What do you recommend that they do?
Um, Take a look at them, figure out exactly where your spend is. What are the itemized accessorials that are your biggest problems? That would kind of be first and foremost. Then try to tackle them, you know, one come up with one solution at a time. If some of those happen to be limited access, residential, liftgate, a couple other ones coming down the pipeline, give Shiplify a try. Just third final shameless plug. Just come on, give us a call. We're here. We're friendly. You might hate it if you've heard of us before. You probably hate us, but we're okay. Not terrible people. Um, and then second, yeah, I mean, I think in whatever you can do to invest in technology, and whether that's AI, whether that's new equipment in the warehouse, whether that's, hey, go find a broker partner, a 3PL partner that is willing to invest in the technology, or they already have. Go and see if you can upgrade any of those processes, any of that technology, because it is going to be well worth your while.
I like it. I feel like this just sums up what happens if you just give Shiplify a call? What if you just called them up, you know?
You might get in touch with me. I don't know. We'll see.
All right,
It's
North.
not me. Probably somebody far better looking. That's for sure.
No, because you're perfect. We've already decided that.
Oh yeah. Well, 99.9%. Right.
99.9. All right, North. So it's time for our final question, and that is today. If you could build a house out of any food, what would you choose?
I've actually put a lot of thought into this.
Hmm.
I feel like I gotta go with Snyder's pretzel rods.
Ooh. Would you make the sourdough, like the big sourdough like pretzels? Would you make that like your windows?
So my thought here, I was just like, gingerbread, yeah, been there, done that, whatever. My thought is saw little slats in them and just build a Lincoln log cabin out of
I love that.
Snyder's pretzel logs.
I also love Snyder's pretzel logs, so you're
I
immediately
know, I
in.
do too. I'll go through a bag at a time,
Like
full family size
that's not
bag
even
at a
that's not
time.
even a challenge. That's just a Tuesday.
These are the hard hitting questions, Mary. I love it.
Exactly. These are the questions people want to know.
What's your
Um,
go to?
my go-to pretzels,
No, you're good. What
my
food are
go-to
you making a
house.
house out of? Yeah.
I mean, look, there's the practical applications of like structural stability. However, I'm not about that. If I'm going to build a house,
Mhm.
it's going to be out of a bunch of desserts. So it's going to be like cake, and there's going to be like a couple different rooms of cake. There's like all the way to like the fancy ones that you see on like the baking shows, to like this
Is
bakery
it
by my
cake?
like it. Oh, I
Yeah.
love Is It
Real
Cake.
or cake? Yeah.
Like basically, I'd basically just build a house out of cake because I love cake a lot. Like delicious, wonderful cakes. I would do.
I almost said Snickers because
Oh,
they're substantialicious,
mhm.
substantialicious. But it would have to be up north so they would freeze, and then I would just have a lifetime
Yeah,
supply of frozen
I'm
Snickers.
not in the structural stability side of things. I just want a beautiful. because the house would be beautiful if I made it out of cakes. Like you could ice it and it would be beautiful. But it would just be delicious.
What about pepperoni pizza? That would be pretty good.
Pizza's a pretty common one.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
just order pizza to your pizza house. You could call it the Pizza Hut.
Um, All right, North. If anyone has any questions about maybe the best floor plans for a pretzel house or how to handle LTL accessorials, where can they find you outside the show?
You can find me on LinkedIn. You can email support@shiplify.com. You can email me directly. I'm not afraid to put my email out there. It's just northw@shiplify.com. If you want my direct phone number, I'll give that to you if you email me.
Yeah,
But
you got to
yeah,
work for that a
you
little
can.
bit.
Yeah, exactly. You got to put in a little effort. So, but yeah, I'm pretty readily available. If anything that I've said sounds like I know what I'm talking about, feel free to give me a shout.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Mary.
You can find Check Called the Podcast anywhere you get your podcasts, like Apple Podcast and Spotify. Don't forget to check out all the other incredible FreightWave shows, and don't forget to subscribe to the newsletter on freightwaves.com/checkcall. See you on the internet.